Adjunct Professor Moran, Microeconomics, 112. In this session we're going to discuss oligopoly. We've been discussing market competition. The best type of market competition for society is pure competition. It results in both allocative efficiency, the mix of goods and services most desired by society, and productive efficiency, the least cost method of production, so we get the most production out of our limited resources. The other types of competition are considered imperfect because they don't achieve those. In order from best of society to worst is pure competition, monopolistic competition, oligopoly, and monopoly. Pure competition and monopolistic competition have many competitors. Oligopoly has few competitors. Monopoly only has one. We're going to explore the characteristics of an oligopolistic industry, review its cost curves, and then we're going to provide some examples. The characteristics of an oligopolistic industry are there are few large producers. The product can either be homogeneous, which means identical to the competitors, or differentiated. So steel is an oligopolistic industry, and one company's steel is the same as another company's steel. A differential oligopoly is when the products that the few large producers make are not the same. So examples of oligopolistic industries are, for example, cigarettes, beer, soda. There are very few producers and their products are different. In oligopolistic industries, they have control over price. There is mutual interdependence though, and what one firm does, when one firm decides to do something, they have to think about what the other firm is going to do, and that's called mutual independence, and it will lead us to a study eventually of something called game theory in our next session. So, because there are only few producers, they do have some control over price. They can charge a higher or lower price, and market forces may not be able to bring them back to an equilibrium. Unlike monopolistic competition and pure competition, which have low barriers to entry, firms enter and exit the industry given economic profit or loss, and that may not happen here. There are barriers to entry, something stopping other industries from going into this field. And it could be economies of scale. For example, the minimally efficient scale, the point at which the long-run cost curve reaches its minimal point, may be at a very high number of units. And so you're going to get very few units producing a large number of output. It could be control over raw material. This occurs especially when we're talking about materials like copper, diamonds, things like that. It could be control of the ability to control supply because of a patent. Pharmaceutical companies, for example, invent new drugs, then take a patent out, and that gives them basically a monopoly on the product. Okay, here are some examples of oligopolies and monopolies. Now, the definition economically of a monopoly is one producer, and an oligopoly is few producers. In the real world, though, these definitions have to be modified. So, how we're going to measure oligopoly and monopoly power by something called a concentration ratio or a market share. A market share is the percentage of total dollars that each firm captures. It can also be by volume of sales, but in our examples we're going to use percentage of dollars each product wins in the marketplace. The four-firm concentration ratio measures the percentage of total industry output attributable to the four top companies. For monopolies, the four-firm ratio is 100%. So that means that the four top firms, if they account for all of the sales in that industry, then those firms have monopoly power. Cigarettes has a 93% ratio, automobiles an 84%, and beer is 85%. So these would not be considered monopolistic, but instead oligopolistic. The Federal Trade Commission, one of the two major federal agencies that regulate monopolies, the other one being the Antitrust Division of the Justice Department, has a different definition. Courts do not require a literal monopoly, in other words, one firm, before applying rules to single firm conduct. In other words, they can use anti-monopoly laws against firms when there are a limited number of competitors. That term is used shorthand for a firm with significant and durable market power. In other words, there are barriers to entry that prevent other firms from entering, so they're going to enjoy significant market power indefinitely. That is the long-term ability to raise price or exclude competitors. That is the term that is used here as a monopolist, is a firm with significant and durable market power. Courts look at the firm's market share, but typically do not find monopoly power if the firm has less than 50% of market share. So for the government to consider a firm to have monopoly power, one firm has to have more than 50% of the sales of an industry. Some courts have required much higher concentration percentages. In addition, that leading position must be sustainable over time. If competitive forces or the entry of new firms could discipline the conduct of the leading firm, they're unlikely to undertake anti-monopolistic decisions against a firm as brought by the Federal Trade Commission or the Antitrust Division of the Justice Department. Here's some examples of industries where the top 5 firms have greater than 60% market share. In other words, these firms are oligopolistic. Primary copper, the top 5 firms have virtually 100%. Beer, the first top 5 firms have 91%. Household appliances, refrigerators and freezers, very oligopolistic. Maytag, for example, right? Frigidaire, Whirlpool, very concentrated industry. Motor vehicles, very concentrated, with the top five having a greater than 60% market share. Aircraft, Boeing, for example, being a very large producer of aircraft. Okay, let's take a look at some specific industries and the competitors therein. All right, so here's beer. So this is Anheuser-Busch, Budweiser, Miller Coors. Miller and Coors were doing so bad compared to Budweiser that they merged elements of their businesses. I think at first it was limited to the distribution. They shared the distribution trucks. I'm not sure if they're fully merged. Constellation, Pabst. Okay, so the Bud, for every dollar spent on Bud captures 45 cents. And Miller Coors have 26 cents. So when you go to a beverage barn and you see all those beers, you're thinking monopolistic competition. Many producers selling differentiated products. But you can see there are really very few producers of beer. Almost all those beers are owned by one of these 3 companies, Constellation, Heineken, and Pabst. Okay, being the other large producers. But here the top 2 have 70% of the sales. 2 firms alone. So that makes this oligopolistic, and that, okay. Now, here's auto manufacturing. The top 4 producers have 16, 19, 10, and 15%. That's 35, 45, 46, 56, 61. So here, the top 4 firms have oligopolistic power. And then the soft drink market. On every dollar spent on soda, Coke is capturing 42 cents and Pepsi is capturing 30 cents. The top 2 firms have 70%. Again, an oligopolistic market. So again, you think that this is a perfect competitive field because there are so many types of soda out there. But Coke and Pepsi own almost everything in the cooler of a 7-Eleven when you look at all those sodas. And you can do that. The drinks, the waters, the juices, they're all owned by these 2 companies, which gives a very high market share or concentration ratio, one way of measuring oligopolistic and monopoly power. Businesses don't want to be in a purely competitive industry. They want to have monopolistic power. How cool would it be if customers had to buy you a product? So they want to increase their market share. And one way they can do this is by merging. A merger is when 2 or more companies combine. So if Coke and Pepsi combine, for example, that would give them monopoly power, 72% for the top firm. And the government would investigate that because that would give them monopoly power. Justice Department of Federal Trade Commission would investigate that. When Exxon wanted to merge with Mobil, if you the company Exxon, their concentration ratio was so high the government made them sell off some of their gas stations to competitors to reduce that concentration ratio. That's what a merger is. So mutual independence. Because there are so few competitors, before you plan to do something, you have to know what your competitor's action may be. And that's called mutual independence. It's going to give us the game theory, which we're going to talk about in the next session. Okay, the cost curves for this industry oligopoly is the same as the cost curves for monopolistic competitors and monopolies. So we'll just briefly touch on that. So you've got a marginal cost curve, an inverted V, which represents price and demand, and this is marginal revenue, this is quantity, this is revenue and cost. The firm will do its best where marginal revenue equals marginal cost, and the best being either being profit maximization, loss min, or shutdown. All firms would like to profit max, but you can't just choose that. It depends on the reality, the physical reality of your cost curves in relation to your price and marginal revenue. So you find marginal revenue equals marginal cost, marginal revenue. Go down until you find the quantity. That's the quantity the firm will produce. Go up to the demand line, go over to the price line, and this will be the price-quantity combination of the firm. Then it's just a matter of seeing where the price is in relation to average total cost and average variable cost. If the intersection, if the marginal cost curve intersects the marginal cost curve down here, this is shut down because price is less than average variable cost and average total cost at that quantity. If the V, let's just do separate graphs then. If the cost curves look like this, average total cost minimizing where it crosses marginal cost, then at this price quantity combination, price is greater than average total cost, and this firm is profit maximizing. Price greater than average total cost. Price greater than average total cost. Profit max. If same inverted V and marginal cost curve. Revenue and cost. Here, find price equal marginal revenue is marginal cost, go up to price. Now if at this price this cost curve looks like this, average total cost curve comes swooping in here, minimizing there and going up, average total cost, and average variable cost comes in here and swings across. Then at this quantity price combination, average total cost is greater, but price is greater than average variable cost. Price between average total cost and average variable cost. This firm is going to loss minimize. It's making a profit on its variable output, which gives it profit to pay down its fixed cost, which it would incur in full if the firm shut down. So its loss will be less than its fixed cost, so it should open and loss minimize in the short run. But the shutdown condition, same inverted V and marginal cost, revenue, cost, quantity, price equals demand, marginal revenue. Find this marginal revenue is marginal cost, quantity, go up and find price. Now, if the firm's average total cost curve is here and the average variable cost curve is here, well, at this price is actually less than this average variable cost at this quantity. Now, price is less than average total, average variable, and the firm should shut down, because now it's losing money on its variable inputs as well. So its loss will be larger than its fixed cost. So in order to lose as little money as possible, they should not lose money on the variable cost as well as the fixed. Shut down and incur only the variable, only the fixed cost. Quick review of the cost curves, same as marginal, monopolistic competition, and monopoly. In our next session, we're going to discuss game theory. Game theory applies to oligopoly, where there are few producers and there's something called mutual independence, when what you do is based in part about what you think your opponent may do.